All right, I'm here on number 11 at Colorado Golf Club. This is an awesome par 3 to learn some course strategy. So the shot's about 170 yards, and here's where I see a lot of people go wrong. You're probably making these same mistakes. First, it's okay to look at the flag and know that that's eventually your target, but understanding your shot patterns, which you can do with the help of a coach or hang out in GOLFTEC long enough, and you'll understand where your shots go left or right or the dispersion short or long. That's the most important piece of this. So while I've got 170 yards to that flag, the stuff that I should start looking at is the trouble around the green. So short left, there's a bunker, short right, there's a bunker, short right, there's water. But you notice how I haven't mentioned anything about past the flag yet. So that should be the first indication of that's really where you're trying to hit this to make sure that you don't make one of those big numbers. So I'm gonna take a club, instead of aiming at 170, I'm gonna try to hit this shot closer to 180. At worst, I hit this really nice and it's 30 feet past the hole and I've got a birdie putt. The best case scenario might be that I mishit that just a little bit, and then that 180 shot I'm trying to hit turns into 170, which a lot of you might be doing as well. Instead of aiming right at that flag at 170 yards, mishitting it and ended up in the water, pull drawing one into that bunker, or any combination of all the trouble that's short of that green. So a good place to start is usually on the left side of the tee box, and then I'm aiming just barely left of the flag and trying to hit it just a little bit long as well. So using the ideas of looking at the trouble around it, understanding your shot patterns, that will give you the third point, which is where you need to aim these shots. All right, so the average shot dispersion here is the same width as the green. So you've got 18 yards from the edge there all the way over to the right edge, most rightward over there. It starts getting narrower the closer that you get, so this is a good spot to land it. And if I were a 70 shooter, this would be my target. That's not always gonna be the case, but that's the case for this one. Meanwhile, as you get worse at golf, like the 80 shooters, their dispersion gets to be 27 yards wide. And since you don't wanna hit it to the right of the green and trickle one down in the bunker, you need to go a little bit further this way, probably even approaching like this rake that you see in the bunker. So my target might be right about here, about 6, 7, 8 yards further to the left than say a 70 shooter should be. This will put most of my dispersion somewhere just barely creeping into this bunker, but I wouldn't go further right on most shots, pretty much all of them, to the right edge of that green. The story gets even crazier though as you get to shooting in the 90s. Now your dispersion is 100% bigger than someone who shoots in the 70s. So that's a good piece of advice. If you shoot in the 90s, what you really need to first do is tighten up your dispersion left and right to get closer to the 70s. But with a 90 shooter, 36 yards wide is the dispersion on a shot like this from 170. So now you've got the edge of that bunker all the way to the edge of the green. That ball could go anywhere in there on this particular shot. So if I were you, to avoid hitting it into the water, from the tee box, I might aim right at that finger right there in the bunker. I know that sounds crazy. That's not what you're doing right now, but that's probably one of the reasons that you shoot in the 90s. From that back tee, aiming there, 50% of your shots are gonna be really good on the green. The other 50% might start trickling back into this bunker, but it's gonna avoid any of those that end up in the water down there. Now up here, this little circle of the green is an interesting little spot too. So this is the depth of the shot. So it's more important to get the short and long versions of this right. So if I come up a little bit short, I'm in that bunker. If I hit it over the screen, I don't really have much of an avenue to chip from. So if this is the middle of the green right here, there's depth to talk about. The 70 shooter is 10 yards short or long from this spot on average, and basically almost every single shot they're gonna hit's in there. So if this pin is back here, it doesn't matter if it's favoring the left side from the tee or a little bit more to the right, this is the spot where you're trying to actually hit that shot. Now the tricky part is that as you get worse at golf, obviously you're gonna have a little wider dispersion on the depth side. So even when you get up into the 80s, at best, and I mean this like at best, your dispersion doubles on the depth view. So while it starts to get a little bit wider left and right, the depth starts to become more problematic. So actually, as you get worse, now you need a different target. You could end up 20 yards short or 20 yards long. A really good shot is going to be problematic with the advice I'm gonna give you, but here it is. You're an 80 shooter, 90 shooter, your target needs to be right back here, the back edge of the screen. That way, if you miss-hit one, like you do quite often, because that's why you shoot in the 90s, you can still catch the front edge of that green. If you hit the best shot of the day, or maybe the best shot of your life, yeah, that's more likely to end up back here. But you know how many of those you're gonna hit during a round. Your score will go down if you start aiming at the back edge of the screen. So knowing the dispersion of the depth and the width, just had 2 shots, and neither one of those would you try to aim at the flag. So an easy way to know your shot dispersion is just to hit a bunch of shots. You can do this on your own. Hit 10 shots with all of your clubs. Take the median distance of those 10 shots, and you've got a way to just challenge yourself. So you can do that on a driving range, any place. But if you have access to a launch monitor, even better, a launch monitor with a coach, you can learn what your shot dispersions are with each club pretty quickly, and then that's really the way to get better. So half of playing better golf is just hitting better shots if you shoot in the 90s. That'll increase the availability that you can actually aim at the flag. But the other 50%, or maybe even more, is actually understanding your shot pattern and knowing when you should be aiming right there or instead of at this flag, and the same thing that we did with that front flag. So learn your shot patterns either by yourself or with a coach. It's going to help you play better.